Hi, I'm Jeff Wohl, outdoor educator and wilderness guide.
And I'm Nikki Man, an author turned illustrator, because the cool natural history we were teaching, we found that photos just weren't doing the job. So we wanted to share all the amazing info of the natural world, and I learned to draw.
I teach nature journaling on all my backcountry expeditions because it's such a great way to get people to slow down and really pay attention to what's around them. One of the challenges I have is a lot of people are intimidated by drawing. They feel they've got to be a great artist, and no matter what they do, it's not quite good enough. For me though, nature journaling is not about making pretty pictures. It's simply just having the courage to put my pen on my paper, taking the time to observe nature in a really detailed and rich way, awaken my curiosity, and discover something about the natural world and myself. If any of you have ever had that doubting voice in your head telling you that you're not good enough, that you're really not an artist, and so you really shouldn't try nature journaling, well, you'll know what I'm talking about when you talk about the inner critic that lives on our shoulder. So for my success in nature journaling, figuring out how to get rid of that inner critic is probably the most important thing. And so I just like to look over at my shoulder, say, "Hi, inner critic, I see you there, and I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to stop me from learning something new. So I'm just going to brush you off my shoulder and tackle this new thing." So I encourage all of you to try that next time your inner critic speaks up and is maybe trying to keep you from doing something that might be a little bit outside of your comfort zone, like potentially nature journaling.
Okay, so there's no rules for a nature journal page, but we just wanted to show you a little bit of what we get out of nature journaling and what we teach when we're teaching nature journaling. So here I have a shooting star, and I wanted to nature journal the shooting stars because they're out now and it's really cool. So I started with, trying to observe more closely, which is one of the most amazing things. Nature journaling makes you curious and you start asking questions. So I started observing my shooting star more closely, and I realized that these were probably going to become the seeds, which I may later collect. And then when I was looking at this, I realized that so many shooting stars are on east-facing ridges, which until I had journaled, I had never noticed. And was there a reason for that, or is that just local? It just gave me some questions, and questions are something we really like to record in our nature journals, the why. We also like to record the date and where we are because we keep these in books, in our notebooks. And so we record that info, and then recorded that it was snowy and this was out early. Maybe it needed instant sun. Maybe that was why it was east-facing ridges. Also heard a song sparrow singing in the background and a high trill of some other bird. Observed there was a ridiculously long stem, that only the flies were out right now that we could see, so maybe that was the pollinator. No nibbling on the leaves. We noticed that a rabbit went by because it left rabbit tracks. And then we noticed that it was tasty. Still tasty. It's getting a little bitter as it gets older, but these flowers are edible, so we also made sure to observe that. Okay. Okay, so we're going to go into a little more detail on that, making big things small and small things big. So if you look at the landscape behind you, that's huge. If you get started on your paper, you're going to be like, I'm drawing here, and I got the arch, and now I'm out of room. So this is part of making that big thing small. And the nature journal, amazing nature journalist John Muir Laws has coined a term which he calls the landscape ito. And what that means is just put a box on it and give yourself a small amount of room in which to manageably look at these huge, beautiful landscapes so you don't get overwhelmed by them. So this is the landscape ito. Shrink it on your page. Make sure you don't get overwhelmed by the scope of what you're drawing. Also to add some depth, right? Because landscapes, it's really hard to make your two-dimensional paper get some of the feel of that three-dimensional amazingness. So remember, close equals dark and detailed, and far equals faded and fuzzy. We should be darker and more detailed than those cliffs back there, although they're pretty amazing, so they're probably going to look pretty good in your background too. Also, when you're going into detail, remember, like I'm drawing this, beautiful mourning dove feather. First, for my nature journal, I've actually put it on my paper so that I have it for a record. And then I'm also looking at it more carefully, but this is really a lot of detail to get in. So I'm going to blow it up so I can really expand on that detail and get into what's really happening in this feather. So when you get into the detail, make sure to give yourself room. Blow up that detail. Make small things big and big things small. Okay, so a few more tips for this. One of the first ones is when you're going out and you're getting ready to go run some long distance, you don't just like jump out of bed and go run immediately right off the bat. Same thing with drawing. Remember, you need to warm up and stretch. Don't put too much pressure on yourself to immediately have a great drawing, because that's at least not why we nature journal. We nature journal to be more curious. If we get an amazing picture, great. But we're doing it to observe more carefully. So we also want to take some of the pressure off ourselves to do it amazing right off the get-go. So warm up your hand to brain. If this means you need to do it on the back of a receipt to take the pressure off you, great. If you can do it right in your notebook and you're just going to do something simple, whatever. Whatever warm-up trick works for you. But remember, your hand-to-brain connection isn't going to come out of bed and go, wham, we're ready to go. Also, some things for, doing shapes, right? Take some pressure off the shapes. If I want to draw, my bird, I can look at it in terms of the shapes that make up the bird, right? So, my bird is a head, a body, it's sitting at roughly this angle, its legs are sticking off. I add a little bit more detail if it holds still, right? With birds, that can be tough. We'll talk about some tricks for that later. Also, I can look at the shapes around it. So if we turn Jeff's head sideways, we can look at Jeff's head in terms of I would draw his cheek and all that, or we can look at the space outside of Jeff's head, the negative space made up by the plane that we see past. So, and we'll go into a touch more detail on that. Also, do not put pressure on yourself not to do something like trace. I want to get this accurate, so I'm going to trace it, and then I'm going to add detail. There's no cheating in nature journaling. There's no wrong way to do this. So take some pressure off yourself. If you want to draw that leaf, put the leaf on the page and draw it. Maybe you slap it in your notebook too. And then you have a record of what you recorded and the details you recorded and the actual dried leaf. Cool.
So now we want to show you a handful of different really cool little watercolor kits from small, medium to large, great for any situation. This is my favorite backpacking watercolor nature journal kit. It includes the Leda Pocket Sketchbook, a mechanical pencil, and a mini watercolor kit. And I really like the Leda notebook because of the soft cover. I can use the elastic to bind my pencil and it doesn't break the spine. My watercolor kit is a mini Altoid container that I have filled with Benadryl pill blisters that I have then filled with the tube paints of my choice. And it's just really handy and travels in. It's also kind of cute. Having great supplies can be a lot of fun, but I want to remind you that for, say, observing these Clark's Nutcrackers, you really don't need anything more than a pen and a simple piece of paper to do a really great job nature journaling. This is our most ultralight travel kit we've made. It's Peerless watercolor paper cut up and glued to a 3x5 card, and a willow twig that's been flattened and frayed at the end to make a paintbrush. So you'll always be ready if you see those coyote pups in the sagebrush that you really just want to take the time, sit down, observe, and really journal and watch their behavior.
So here I'm using a bigger kit than Jeff's. This is my size watercolor kit that I use if I'm not backpacking. It has a slightly more complete palette. And I'm also using the bigger size Leda notebook because I find that my drawings, unless I'm backpacking and super concerned on weight, I want just a little bit more space to make more notes for my nature journal, make more questions, leave myself less of a restriction on that type of space. You also notice I was using the Vortex scope to do my nature journaling. We use this in binoculars a lot. We also film through the scope, like this film of the mountain goat. There is no cheating in nature journaling. If you want to bring back a video clip or some stills so you can spend some time later really looking at the critter that you were watching, great. Nature journaling is about recording whatever you want to and however you want to make you more curious. So if you're more comfortable in words and poetry, do that. And if you want to learn more about nature journaling and drawing, there is no better resource than we can recommend than the Law's Guide to Nature Drawing and Journaling. He also has an amazing website with a lot of free information for you to get started so you can draw that really, really cute chipmunk in the way you really wanted to and ask some questions and record cool information.
Thanks so much for watching.
And have a fun time journaling.